Good morning and welcome to Career Launch Live. I am your host, Catherine McCord, and I could not be more excited about today's episode because it's something that's very relevant in my life. It's something that's very relevant in my career. And I have one of my favorite LinkedIn influencers. I hate to use that term because she's way more awesome than that term implies, but I totally nerd out on all of her content. So I'm very excited to have her here with us today to discuss that you can be successful with a mental health diagnosis and that these things are not exclusive. So without any further ado, let's bring on Miss Lori Potts. Welcome.
Hi. So good to see you, Catherine. I'm so excited for this.
I know, I'm so stoked. It was so funny that yesterday when I did the post about being bipolar and OCD and still being successful, that somebody specifically asked me, so who do you nerd out on? And you were like one of the first names that I came out on. I was like, yeah, here, this human over here will inspire you every day. Go.
Thank you. You're so sweet. I
So
always try to make my content like punchy and get people to feel something when I
it
post something
it does
because
elicit a strong response for sure.
good, good. Yeah, some of the most some of the most content I get the most engagement on are those like posts where like it's totally against a lot of people's opinions, like success and mental illness not coinciding, or like people will tell you whatever they think will make you shut up as a woman,
Yeah,
or
that's true.
yeah,
Sad and true.
so whatever, like slut, bimbo, uh, no, angry black woman, whatever
Yeah.
it is. There's
Yeah.
always going to be something that someone thinks. Hi, Tara. Thanks for joining
Hi,
us.
Tara. And there's speaking of other people that heavily motivate and influence me, Miss Tara Furiani. If you don't follow her, do it. So tell us a little bit about you and your background so that our audience can get to know you just a little bit better.
hmm I really found that I wanted to coach at a very early age. I didn't know what the term coach or mentor meant. I was like 6 years old when I realized, oh, I want a sibling so I can like guide them and teach them and like help them work through problems. And that like isn't normal for children. I don't think like they want playmates, right? Like I didn't want a
Not all
playmate.
children.
I just wanted to coach them. And obviously, like I said, I didn't have that word in mind to what that meant.
Right.
But once I realized as an adult, oh, this is what I really wanted, then I decided to go for it. I
You put a
originally
name to it is what happened. You just put a
exactly.
name to the dream.
Exactly. So I originally started coaching when one of my bosses just noticed I was able to really bridge that gap between his intent and impact. He would go into a meeting and we would have planned doing something a certain way, presenting or sharing an idea in a particular fashion and framing it a certain way to achieve X outcome, right? That didn't happen. I told him, like, straightforward, I'm a very direct person. So we talked about doing it this way, but you did it this way, which kind of killed our ability to achieve XYZ. And he's like, oh, you're right. So from there, he just kind of always asked me from my perspective. Like he would say, this person always acts terrified in their one-on-ones with me. And, he wouldn't talk about their performance or anything like that, of course. But
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm like, other people say the same thing, just not to your face. And um, they would be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so scared of him." I'm like, "He's a really nice guy. He just never smiled." And I don't like telling people like, your solution
Yeah.
is to smile more, especially women. I was constantly told as a child,
Oh
like,
God,
smile
I
more,
know.
you'll look pretty.
You
And
you know
I'm
what
like,
I
I
don't
don't
like
have
too?
to.
Why is it that if you don't smile, you automatically are labeled as having resting bitch face? Why is
Right,
that what it's called? Why isn't
right.
it just that's just what your face looks like?
So I really like that author Vanessa Van Edwards, and she's a communication expert too. She calls it resting jerk face. She changed it. So
Resting what was it
it
called?
is resting jerk face. So it's more universal. It's so and less sexist.
I like
Um,
that. That's
yeah,
at least a little bit better.
it
I
is. Yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
for
so funny.
Yeah, so from there, I decided to do public speaking coaching. I coached TEDx speakers. Then one of the speakers asked me to help her advance her career. So I went, and I'm a really good writer. So I helped her write a resume and do coaching. And
Real quick, I want to pause on that. I love that you just bragged on yourself and didn't apologize for it and didn't make a thing about it. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
So many people do that, and they kind of stop and they feel like they need to add humility. Why? If you're awesome, brag.
Amen.
Anyway, so sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So because I was good at those things, I naturally went in that direction. I've always been a good writer, and before I left college, I decided to do lots of research on career best practices, which I feel like a lot of university students don't. They just rely on their university to do everything. I'm like, I'm going to research all the experts so I get a job that I want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Set yourself up for success.
I didn't have the experience that I wanted to really get into organizational development. Even though I got a degree in strategic organizational communication, I mostly had experience more hard in PR. So I went into marketing, which I didn't love, never really wanted to go into marketing. But I got a job right out of college, and a lot of people don't these days. So worked in marketing for a while. While I was doing that, I was building my side gig. And then in 2020, I decided to not pursue marketing anymore, and just go into what I knew I loved, what I knew I was good at. I wanted to stop questioning myself. So went on with a resume writing company. Don't recommend those for anyone who is looking to revamp your resume. The one I went on with, which I won't name, they had an internal Slack channels where the writers could ask questions. Some of them were like, "What's an applicant tracking system?"
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Like,
I tell people
if you're
they're individuals.
Writer, if you're a resume writer, you should already know what that is.
Oh my God, yes. You should, in fact, if you're going to hire somebody to do your resume, make sure they have an HR background or recruiting background, something like that, where they actually know what they're talking about. Because a lot of times people will hire people to do resumes that have backgrounds that have no business telling them what a hiring team is looking for. They don't know what the hiring team is looking for. I talked to somebody who literally went from being a customer service person, which is a great job, I'm not bashing that, to being a resume writer. I'm like, what do you know about this? Why are you selling us? Anyway, I digress. So I want to dive into our topic here today.
Sure.
This is a hot button topic for both you and I. It's something that kind of sets us off, is this idea that you cannot have a mental health diagnosis and still be a strong team member or a worthwhile hire or a boss or an entrepreneur. And I do it because we've kind of talked about terms that irritate us. So we'll just dive into that. Don't ever say boss lady to me. I like, not you, but it's just like the audience. Like, that makes me insane. Why do people say that? It's just, no, I'm just a person who is a boss. I am a person who is an entrepreneur. You don't need to tack anything onto that. I don't need a cutesy term to make me to signify that I'm a girl and I'm doing it. No, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a manager. I'm a whatever it is. That's the end of it. Yeah, yes, I'm a woman, but come on now.
I remember one of the posts I did a couple, probably weeks ago, I don't remember, was, and now my fibromyalgia brain is making me completely forget what I was going to say. Remind me what you were saying.
I was talking about boss lady nonsense.
Right.
When people, yeah.
So we should start saying like male scientist and male engineer and like
boy boss,
male boss. It sounds stupid.
It's stupid. It's idiotic.
People know that, of course males are going to be in those fields. Or a male doctor. It's just because traditionally, years ago, those were all male-dominated fields, and some of them still are. But it's just stupid.
It's stupid. I don't need to make it cute.
Their title is. You don't need to do that.
Yeah. I was like, yes, we're bosses, full stop. Yeah, period. End of sentence. That's the last thing. But it's something, so just to fully disclose for anyone who watches this now or later, I have both. I have several mental health diagnoses, but the ones I talk about the most are my bipolar one and OCD. And for those watching who think that they're also OCD just because something, they like things a certain way, that's not necessarily obsessive compulsive disorder. It can be a lot more specific than that. So one of the things I like to ask is, if you don't mind, what's your experience with neurodivergence or mental health? It doesn't have to be you necessarily, but kind of what's your experience with that?
So I have cyclothymia, which is on the bipolar spectrum. So essentially, because a lot of people don't know this, I'll explain. You have more frequent cycles, whereas traditional bipolar typically, I'm saying typically, you have months or years of manic or depressive
Right.
episode. Mine are days or maybe a week, and it's all at a less extreme level usually. So I it would be really hard to fall asleep. Um, I have lots of energy, like for manic episodes, for example, and like I'm impulsive, those types of things. But they're not like I'm trying to scale a building, or
Right.
I'm just trying to think of like actual extreme things that I've seen, like in the news, things like that, of someone who's having a mental health crisis who does those types of things. Um, so that's been a struggle because um, my mood fluctuates. I need lots of sleep, so I sleep more than most people. I need about 9-10 hours to stay stable, but I am a
Right.
which helps. And then I also have anxiety. Diagnosed with anxiety when I was 9 or 10. Um, and then with cyclothymia when I was 16. Never got on a medication that worked for me until my mid 20s or so, which was really hard. It just can take a long time to figure out what it is that works for you. Anyone
Yes.
here who's ever tried medication for mental health, it can be a journey. And then I had PTSD from giving birth. Won't talk about the hospital or name them. I don't want to get into a lawsuit. Um, so that happened. And then I also have complex PTSD from childhood. Complex PTSD is different from PTSD in the sense that there's small, similar traumas over time,
Right.
which make relationships really difficult and trust really difficult because the
Right.
people who are supposed to meet your needs during childhood chronically did not, or chronically were abusive. And
Right.
so, yeah, it's been a challenge in our marriage. And like, it's difficult with people in positions of authority if they're not good leaders. Like, I just have low tolerance for
Right.
in the first place. What I grew up with. And so, um, and then on top of it, like there's lots of bad leaders. Most people don't know how
Yeah.
to lead effectively in the business world. So that's kind of a gist of all of it. And then from my PTSD, I got fibromyalgia, which is basically an overall pain condition. Been able to get on some medication to help with that, but I still
Oh,
have,
good.
brain fogginess. I'll forget my train of thought much more than most people, like I did earlier. Um, so it can kind of kill my ability to be seen as competent, um,
Mm.
with the fibromyalgia. Like, I'm a public speaking coach in addition to career coaching. And like, if I lose my train of thought, like how does that kill my credibility, right? But
But
I've just chosen to be okay with that and to not care. Like, I know I'm competent. I know I am good at this. I have plenty of testimonials to prove it. And it's like public speaking coaching and interpersonal communication. That's
yeah.
where my bias, I
And
feel like,
to your point, so I have a seizure disorder. It's one of
Mhm.
my 5,000 health problems. And because of that, same thing. If I've had seizure activity, it is very hard for me to get up and give a talk or a speech. I
Yeah.
still do it. And what's interesting is when I tell people what's happening ahead of time, so I start the speech, I let them know what's going to happen and
Mhm.
explain it, people connect to that.
Yeah.
And I've had people come up and talk about that because I talked about these things, because I was honest, it let them open up, or it made them connect better to the speech. And nothing was taken away. They still got the information, they learned, they had fun, all these kinds of things, but it was just different. It was
Yeah.
just different.
And I
So I
don't want to
wanted,
work with those people who are going
oh
to
yeah,
judge me for it in the first place, right?
no, yeah, that's kind of on them at that point. So I want to talk about that because that's who we're here to talk about. These judgy jerks who are just thinking, oh, you're incompetent because you have this, or this. So I've talked about this a bunch on the show, and just so everybody knows, because I have been asked about this recently. Yes, I have his permission to talk about my husband and what goes on with him. My husband is on the spectrum, and he also has obsessive compulsive disorder, and he has a very different neurodivergent experience than I do. Very, very different experience
Right.
altogether, and and he's and what's interesting is he's masked so well over the years that until people really are around him for a while, they don't so much notice
Mhm.
anything different, um, which is unhealthy. And he's starting to unlearn that so that he understands it's okay to show more of that and to let himself do things that are more natural and comfortable. Um,
Like it's
and
important to
it's
learn effective social skills, but like
yeah,
if you're losing who you are and your
yeah.
authenticity, that and whatever progress you're trying to make or goals you're trying to achieve, it's not worth it.
Well, it's like, and his biggest struggle has always been small talk at work. People
Mm,
just insisting on having these meaningless conversations with him that
yeah.
just stress him out, and then it causes him to not be able to function as highly, and all of this, and it's actually caused him issues over the years, where if they'd have just let him come in, sit there quietly before a meeting, and then do his thing, it would have been fine. But he wasn't comfortable asking that. And he's one of the most competent, I mean, God, I don't even like using that word because he's a freaking superstar at everything he's ever done. I mean, he's been at the top of his game in multiple industries, headhunted like a crazy person. He's extremely gifted and extremely brilliant. And yet, so many people, if he, like, let's say we were in a backward society where you had to disclose what you have, a lot of people wouldn't want to hire him because
Mhm.
of the odds, and they would assume he's not good with people, even though he's one of the best managers that his staff has ever had, and they've all told him that. So my question to you is, what are some of the kind of backwards theories? Because I've talked about this a lot on the show, but what are some of the kind of backwards things that you've seen with your clients that they experience in the world where people assume that they can't do things? Kind of like you talked about with yourself. What are some experiences that you've seen for other people?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do for women, because I specialize in helping women because of the chauvinistic environment I grew up with, I learned a lot of self-sabotaging behaviors, a lot of subordinate mannerisms that were killing my ability to be seen as credible because I acted subordinate all the time. So in regards to the question, in helping people unlearn their own bias and also recognize when someone else is acting that way towards them. I
Right.
advise people to use bias in their favor as much as possible. So, for example, sitting up straight, that communicates confidence, right? Um, taking up taking up room where you're in, not just sitting up straight, but like my arms are out. That makes me seen as more authoritative because my body is taking up more space.
Right.
Um, if you want, you can wear heels. That makes you appear taller. Stereotypically, for centuries and centuries, this is conditioning from centuries and centuries. You typically would see people who won our wars were big and tall and strong, right?
Right.
So we have this stereotype of the people who are big and tall and strong are the most competent and the ones who are going to lead us and help us be successful. But that has
Yes.
Zero relevance to being successful in business.
True. It's
None.
so true.
None.
One of the biggest
Um,
badasses I know in business is literally 4'9".
yeah,
Like,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But for example, on a remote call, keeping your head in the top portion of the screen, that makes you appear taller. Simple little thing that you can change that will improve people's view of your authority in an interview or in meetings.
right.
Um, so those are a couple of the things that I would advise right off the bat
Oh
to
yeah.
for anyone. It doesn't matter whether you have mental illness, what gender you are, just work on those. And like I mentioned, like if you're losing who you are in the process of achieving a goal, it's not worth it because that means you're changing yourself probably for someone else because of other people's bias rather than, oh, do I have this insecurity or bias towards myself that is killing my ability to be perceived in the way that I know I
Oh,
should be.
I love that you just hit on that so much because oddly enough to me, one of the biggest concerns that I see out there for the mental health and physically disabled or physical diagnosis community is self bias.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, it could be how you were raised, it could be the society that you're in, but being told you're less than or you're defective or you should be this way, not this way, being told what you should be.
You need to be fixed. I feel like
Yes,
that's
you need to
one
be
that
fixed.
so
You need
many
there
of us
there's
face.
and I've seen a lot of that, and it's really heartbreaking. There's one woman that I follow on LinkedIn, and I think she's very smart, and I think that she has a lot of great things to say, but it breaks my heart because you can tell that she feels like she's less than and disabled, not because that's her personal experience, but because that's what everyone else has told her. Everyone else has said, this is you, this is what you are.
Right.
And you can just see that pain and it kills me. And I think about people like you and I who have seen it and gone, no, I'm not defective. You're defective. I'm good over here. I'm strong and I've
That's
got this.
that's such a good way to put it. Like you're defective for seeing me that way.
Yeah. Yeah. This is your problem, not mine. I
Yeah.
was kind of born that way. My mom told me. I asked her a while back because I kept being asked about this. I said, when did I, kind of come to this conclusion? She goes, oh, you've always been that way. When you were little and people would think less of you because you were a child, you'd look at them and say things like, excuse me, I have an opinion.
Right. That's how I was. Like I was so frequently the adult in my family. And so, but there's that bias towards children. Children aren't supposed to be capable like adults. So not
Oh,
true.
well,
Not
no,
true.
no.
I
They're
was I
brilliant.
was more assertive than my mother. Um, like and like my father was chronically unemployed. Like, and I'm a career coach now. Like, and
Go
he's never
figure.
moved up in his field. He's always been in the same place. Um, so, and I would like my mom would start complaining. I'm like, you should do this. Like, stop complaining and go effing
You problem
fix your
solved.
life. Like,
Yeah,
you have the power to do that. You are not helpless. um, so I just, yeah, I faced that a lot too, that bias during
yeah,
childhood of, um, and I look really young too, so I still face that bias of, oh, you look really young, you're not competent.
yeah.
It's not true. By the way, I'm in my 30s for anyone who's wondering. I know I look really young. Always done. Always looked that
That's
way.
not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all.
I don't particularly care.
But that's the
Whatever.
point. But that's the point I think you have to get to is I don't care about whatever it is. It's
And
like,
I don't have to work. And because I'm an entrepreneur, I get to effing work with who I want. Like,
yeah,
if someone is going to chronically judge me the entire time we're working together, I
yeah.
don't have to work with that person.
No.
And I'll say the same thing for anyone who chooses a 9 to 5 job. You can move on. Some of the best people I
100%.
know in business have quit. They've quit the bad relationships. They've quit terrible bosses. They've quit terrible cultures. They've quit families
Yeah.
because they don't have positive experiences and they're toxic and they are super negative. Like,
Yep. I did that
extremely
with almost an entire side of my family. I'm like, you're all fired. I can't with you. This is too much for me.
yeah, fire people out of your life.
I fire people out of your life. I say that all the time. I'm very pro firing people for, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like you're newer to the show, but it's true. I really, and this is what I really wanted to hit on today is, you know, and it's hard. And don't get me wrong. You know, Lori and I, you know, in our conversation, we talked about the things that we've each had to do to learn to accommodate ourselves. And that's a thing that you have to do. But here's something that I think is not talked about enough. Just about every human on this planet, whether temporary or long term, has to find a way to accommodate themselves at some point in their life.
Yeah.
This is just part of the human experience. And you are not less than because you have to do something that literally every other freaking person on the planet has to do. Okay? You are not. That is not how this thing goes. And
Like, how
with
many
all
people that don't have mental illness take medication?
right, right. Some of
Yeah.
them, by the way, for things that they don't even need it for. So that's a whole other situation. But it's when you start to realize that the problem is with them, not you, that gives you so much strength. And then I think the thing that both you and I have learned is that when you own it very publicly, when you say, yeah, okay, so this is going to happen today, just don't worry about it. I do that with clients. I do it at the beginning of talks all the time. I say, hey, so just so you know, I have this. It's going on a little bit today. You may see some twitching. One of the jokes I always say is when I have my face twitches is like, okay, if I wink at you, I'm not trying to pick you up for a date. This is this is
That's so
just something
fantastic. I love that one.
just just want to let you know, thanks to a wonderful human named Stacy Kaysen, she came on the show and she decided that that was my dance moves, you know, just
I love that.
so
And
I'll
I
address.
get twitching as a side effect of one of my medications sometimes.
So now you know you have dance moves. That's all it is. It's just your dance.
I love that.
and
I
and so
I have a trouble using humor in like situations. Like, I'm not
right.
naturally funny, and so I just stopped trying because it would just end up being awkward. Like, I stopped trying to be someone I wasn't, right? Like, some people are naturally funny. I was like, oh, everyone gravitates towards them because of that. But I'm like, but that's not me. Like, that's not authentically me. So
No.
I'm not gonna try. But one of the reasons why I do struggle with that is because I grew up in a very serious environment, and so I wasn't really um, like, humor wasn't really a part of the family culture.
Right.
You
It's
know
not
what I mean?
ingrained. It's not ingrained,
Yeah.
but there's different ways to address it. So I can use humor or just basic education. What are some of the things that you do to let other people know that, yeah, this is part of me, but I got you?
Honestly, I haven't. That's been hard for me.
Okay.
My father's a perfectionist. So grew up with that mentality. Like, after our conversation today, my mind will immediately go to, what did you do wrong so you can fix it immediately so then you don't get criticized? Rather than, this went great. All of these things, the conversation was on fire, your advice was valuable. That's immediately the synapse that fires is
Right.
former. So, like, this is the first time I've ever shared that I have cyclothymia publicly. I talked about
Wow. Thank
anxiety.
you.
I talked about um, my fibromyalgia a little bit, but it's just, there's still so many mental illnesses that have that stigma, and like, even being, an influencer on LinkedIn, I people are still critical of
God, yes.
and
Oh, yeah.
so, like, there's a certain level of vulnerability that, like, we have to, and anyone who has mental illness who's worked for a corporation, you understand this. You have to decide, like, how transparent am I going to be about my health with my employer, or you're like, with my clients.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just say, like, "Hey, I'm sick." Like, if I didn't get enough sleep the night before, or um, like, if I'm not going to be able to process this person's speech that I'm supposed to be critiquing because my mental state isn't where it needs to be, then I'm not serving them well.
Right.
So like, so
It's
sometimes, yeah, it's hard. And like you have permission not to be vulnerable if you don't want to. And
yes.
have your level of comfort be where you want it to be. If you're not comfortable trusting someone, like trust your gut with that, then don't. Like that's totally
100%.
fine. Um,
And I
but
do want to say I've been fired for a job for my health.
mhm,
Literally happened.
yeah, it
I've
happens.
also, after requesting an accommodation, the very last W-2 job I had, I requested an accommodation and then was immediately written up for the very thing that I requested an accommodation for. So please understand, audience, that these two humans, wait, you're over there. These two humans
You're good.
relates very much to what we understand the fear and the reasons. There is only one diagnosis that I've literally never publicly discussed, and it's because it can put you in danger to do that. And I learned that very early on.
Mhm.
And so I don't discuss it. I just don't, because there are the people that will take that and run in a very negative way.
Yeah.
I actually want to talk about it. I've been trying to figure out the best way to do it, um, but have been asked by the very few people who are aware of the diagnosis specifically not to, just because of their fears as well. So um, it's a balancing act, right? Like, do I
Mhm.
make them feel more comfortable, or do I just do me and just go bold and just risk it and just say, hey, let's see what happens? Um,
Right.
and so it is, and you don't owe anybody an explanation. And so you
No.
can, when you talk about what you need and what makes you different, you can you can own it without having to explain why, right? You could just say, hey, this is, like, I'm foggy today, or hey, I am, um I have, I don't know, this, or the, can we do this tomorrow, and just not really explain it. So you can still find a way to meet your needs. You don't owe anybody your diagnoses, and you don't owe anybody your privacy and your safety
Yep.
at
Amen.
all. The
Yeah.
end.
So there's just some situations where you feel more comfortable sharing some things and other situations when you don't. So that's completely up to you and very personal choice.
Yes, it is. But still know, for your own peace of mind, that you can be great with whatever you have going on. I mean, for some kind of extreme examples, look at like Stephen Hawking. I mean, good God. What, like, with that diagnosis, by all accounts, he should have been on disability and just staying at home. And yet, look at his contribution to society. You have neurodiversity all over the place in entrepreneurs that are very public about it. Thank you, Richard Branson, for all of your great work with dyslexia. I think that's wonderful. A lot of people talking about their ADHD, a lot of people talking about their autism, even people, and I love this. I love that actors and actresses have started really talking about their autism and things like that, because it breaks the stereotype that you can't be social, that you can't be funny, that you can't talk to people. I've worked with people with autism that are great salespeople. I've worked with people that have autism that literally do not want to talk to a single human. The range is huge. Every individual is different. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing. We have to stop assuming that every woman is the same or every man is the same. Or, I mean, thank you and I both prove that women are not all the same.
Yeah. So
I
true.
definitely do. Um, because there are I remember growing up, and even just other people my age, I would look at them like, I don't get it. What's with this other little human? I don't understand what's their deal is.
Yeah.
Everybody is different, and you can be as successful as you want. You can break barriers, or you can sit back and just be comfortable in your life and not push it. And that's a
Yeah.
wonderful choice too.
Yeah.
That's, I don't like this idea that success has to mean, like, you advance
Like
you
the
advance in your career.
traditional American
Yeah.
dream is so
No.
outdated.
It is
So
so
outdated.
outdated. If somebody's good at what they do and they just want to rock that for their whole life, great.
Yep. Like you
Yay
have to
for
be
them.
realistic, like provide for yourself and your family.
Well,
But like it's
yes.
so
Don't be a
easy. Like
mooch.
yeah, it's so easy to start side gigs these days. There's just so many different options. You don't have to, get married at what 20 and then go
Yeah.
to and have a man with a bachelor's degree who goes into accounting, like I'm thinking of like 50s movie, who then comes home to a perfect little wife in this pretty little dress with kids behaving perfectly at the table, and then retire at 64, 60, whatever it is, and then live on retirement. Like they're like,
Like,
does that bring you joy? Like for some people it does. For
yeah,
some people, my sister's a stay-at-home mom, has 5
which is
kids,
beautiful.
brings her tons of joy. She's like,
Yeah.
we live like completely opposite lives. It feels like what would like your hell is like the opposite of my hell.
Right.
I'd rather have my kids and like have all of that noise and all of that stimulus all the time.
Couldn't. I
And
would cry. I would
yeah,
cry.
and me have to never pursue any of my like career dreams, and hers is like I would hate to be an entrepreneur and like have all that stress, and I'm like the opposite is stressful for me.
Oh yeah. Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
so like everyone's different. So if someone else is like
Yeah.
criticizing you and telling you like, oh, you should be doing this thing, that's projection. That's probably
Yes.
them
Yes.
saying to themselves, but just speaking it out loud to you, oh, you shouldn't act this way because people will start thinking of you like XYZ.
Right. Exactly. I have two brilliant examples of people that were just completely opposite of what they were supposed to be in my life. So I had a stay-at-home parent, and it was my father who stayed with me for years, and he still did some work. He did part-time work and helped take care of me, um, and it was spectacular. It was such a cool experience, and that was natural for him. He's a very nurturing, cool person who's also had a phenomenal career that included playing at Carnegie Hall twice.
Amazing.
So good for him. Then you have my Mimi, who is going on 90 at this point, but she went from the stereotypical stay-at-home mom, blah blah blah. Although she rocked it, man, that woman even made their clothes. I mean, she was just amazing. Did that, was a missionary in Papua New Guinea for a couple of years, went and worked in downtown Dallas in the skyscrapers and had a career, and then helped my grandfather found and run a chiropractic clinic in East Texas.
All over the place.
All
right?
over the place.
You don't
You
have
can
to go up the corporate ladder, get this degree, and stay in the same industry forever with a
no,
9 to 5 job.
no.
You know,
Why do that?
you
My grandfather didn't do that either. Yeah. So the point is, a diagnosis is a diagnosis. My dad's, got all, I won't go into that, but that, health stuff and all that kind of stuff. My mother has all kinds of health stuff going on with her and yet had a fabulous career. I know several stay-at-home mothers who rock being wonderful, fantastic stay-at-home moms that have mental health diagnoses and things like that, and also have some physical diagnoses. I know some guys that are great single dads that are out, I mean, in the truest sense of the word, raising the kids by themselves, out there rocking and rolling, that have severe mental health diagnoses, and they're great with their career and they're great as parents. Your diagnosis does not define you.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah.
So true.
So as we say goodbye, because we are way the hell over time, but that's okay because I like talking to you. We are, but that's okay. As we wrap up, what are your final words of wisdom to those people out there who are sitting here watching us saying, gosh, I wish I could be okay with this, but I'm just not?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
What immediately comes to mind is like stop living to others' expectations, and which is like so much easier said than done. And like start caring less about what other people think. Again, way easier said than done. It's been a process for me, and I still care. We're always going to, right? Because we're interdependent with other people. But if you can start learning what your own expectations are of yourself rather than what others have placed upon you, either parents or anyone else in your life, if you can start adjusting your expectations, then you're going to be a hell of a lot happier. Trust me. I just, yeah, stopped, and it's still hard, but like, stopped expecting myself to be able to play with my child at the same time while working, while cleaning the house. Like, I feel like
You mean you don't have
as
8 arms? You're not
women,
an octopus?
we're always criticizing ourselves if we're not doing one of those things, and we can't do all of them at the same time. Like, that's an insane expectation. It's not real. You can't clean, care for a child, and work all simultaneously. Like, compartmentalize. Compartmentalizing is one of the best things that I've ever done for my mental health. I do not have notifications on for my phone except for text messages. My clients know that if something urgent comes up, like they have an interview coming up or they have something, I don't know, like a conversation with their boss coming tomorrow or in the next few days, like, okay, then we'll schedule something right away. But other than that, like, I control when I communicate with my clients, when I'm on LinkedIn. I don't have LinkedIn notifications on my phone. Like, compartmentalize, care less about what other people think of you, and set your own expectations of yourself.
That's great advice. So I also heard give yourself grace and
Yes,
that give
yes,
yourself grace and
that's a good
find
way
your
to put it.
tribe, find your humans, because let me tell you, when you do, it will help you to not care about the other noise in the world. When you're hearing the right voices and those people that are there to support you, that means everything. And with that, I highly recommend on this topic connect with Kat Alexander, Nikki Rickman, Lori. There are some other fantastic people that I can introduce you to. So if you're looking for your tribe, please reach out. I will make introductions. Thank you so very much for joining us, Lori. You've been an absolute delight. You did not disappoint.
Thank you so much. You're so kind.
So everybody have a happy Friday. We'll see you same time, same place next week.